And I appreciate the chance to be here. More importantly, I appreciate my colleagues who were standing with us all together on this very important piece of legislation dealing with the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and their accountability. I guess I will begin where I'm going to end, and that is the one takeaway from all this I'd like to leave you with is the taxpayers in this country right now are in essence the owners of the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so what the legislation that we are about to introduce shortly will do is to ensure that the taxpayers will know exactly what they're on the hook for. How the bill will do this, that we'll be dropping in, is a couple ways. We'll make sure that once and for all we try to do away with budgetary gimmicks. We'll try to provide the transparency and accountability that the administration always talks about. And what we'll try to do also provide for accounting of the debt and the obligation of both the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie. Specifically on these 2 points, what we do is this. We say that these entities should all be basically on the books of the U.S. government, A, and B, that the debt, the losses of these entities should also apply to the debt ceiling. So right now we have about losses of around $1.6 trillion. It should apply to the debt ceiling as well. So in a sentence, what we want to do is have the direct the OMB to treat the GSEs the same way that the CBO does. So we want the Office of Management and Budget to treat the GSEs the same way as far as the being on budget as CBO does. And how the CBO does it very quickly is this. They go back to a 1967 law, the President's Commission on Budget, and looks through some of the criteria on this as to what should be on budget and not. They look to see if you have an entity or an agency that is who supplies the capital, who controls it, who owns it, who sets the program, who sets the budget. What are all the answers to that? In this case, the answers to all of that is the federal government, and for that reason, the CBO puts these items on budget. And the second portion of it is, as I said already, is that it takes the debt limit and applies the $1.6 trillion of debt that these entities currently have and applies it to that as well. And closing on that way, why we do it that way is this. We want to make sure that the OMB will treat the debt, the money basically that the GSEs borrows in order to buy up mortgages to put into their portfolio, the exact same way that the Treasury now does with regard to the Treasury notes, borrowing money and it goes to the debt ceiling. So those are the 2 points. So the takeaway from this is that the taxpayer is on the hook for these, so the taxpayer should be made aware of what they're on the hook for. The legislation that we're supporting today and dropping in today will make sure that is done by accountability and transparency. And with that, I'm very pleased to be joined today by the ranking member of Financial Services, the man from Alabama. There he is, Mr. Bacchus.
Thank you. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to commend Scott Garrett. Scott has served as a ranking member of the committee, which is capital markets, insurance, and government-sponsored entities since December of 2008, and he's done a wonderful job. And I'm pleased to join him and my colleagues as co-sponsors of his GSE bill. Any serious discussion of addressing deficit spending must include Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, as you can see from this chart. Taxpayers have already contributed $110 billion to the bailout of these GSEs, and they're on the hook for hundreds of billions of dollars more. Taxpayers now own 80% of the two enterprises and have explicitly guaranteed over $5 trillion in Fannie and Freddie debt, yet their operations are not included in the federal budget. The Congressional Budget Office said in January that Freddie and Fannie should be put on budget. The fact is that the Obama administration has been obscuring the cost of the GSEs from the taxpayers by not including them in the budget. In a meeting earlier in my office this morning, Congressman Henserling said, "Isn't this what got Enron in trouble?" It certainly got Enron in trouble. It got WorldCom in trouble. It got AIG in trouble. And as we've seen in recent days, Greece is in trouble for accounting gimmicks, and several European countries. In fact, the regulators, from time to time move against companies that try to hide things off the balance sheet. And that is simply not honesty in accounting. And that's really what this bill is all about, just honesty in accounting. The real numbers. When you hide your debts, it just leads to a bigger day of financial reckoning down the road. Greece is facing that as we speak. The United States is certainly facing that. Debts, deficits, higher taxes, and hopefully not, but surely a risk of, as we're beginning to hear from Moody's and others, of actual default. It's time to put an end to this reckless behavior in our budget. We're having a discussion as Republicans this week on a sustainable budget as opposed to the unsustainable budget that the administration has put forth. Scott Garrett's bill will bring badly needed transparency, accountability, honesty, and oversight to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and their debt situation. It is time for the Obama administration to own up to the full cost of the blank check they wrote to Fannie and Freddie on Christmas Eve. This time I'd like to ask Congressman Hensley, who has also served since December of 2008 as a subcommittee or ranking member on financial institutions.
Thank you, Spencer. When the final chapter is written on the history of our financial debacle, it will show that the cause was government policies that cajoled, incented, and mandated financial institutions to lend money to people to buy homes that ultimately they could not afford. At the epicenter of those federal policies was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And before all the dust settles in the final accounting, they will prove to be the mother of all bailouts. Indeed, I believe Spencer is right. The accounting gimmicks that are used today would make an Enron and WorldCom accountant blush. The American people know that under the policies of this administration, under the policies of this Congress, we are drowning in a sea of red ink. The deficit, highest level ever, up tenfold in 2 years. The president submits a budget that will double the national debt in 5, triple it in 10 from fiscal year 08 when he was first elected. In fact, if you look at the rules of the EU, when you look at our debt to GDP ratio, our deficit to GDP ratio, using honest accounting, we couldn't even get into the EU. Now, why are EU countries getting into trouble? Because of accounting gimmicks that they use to trick their people. The president has often spoken about accountability and transparency. This is an opportunity to engage in a deed as opposed to words to actually achieve that. And I would hope that this legislation would be necessary, that the president would direct the Office of Management and Budget to have honest accounting for the American people about the amount of debt that is attached to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I want to applaud our ranking member for his outspoken words on this subject. I especially want to applaud the gentleman from New Jersey for his steady and consistent leadership in assuring that there is accountability and transparency for these two entities. And now a truly outspoken advocate who, long before it was cool to recognize the problems that Fannie and Freddie presented to the economic system, the gentleman from California, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Jeff. Just to go back to the issue of the failure of the administration to properly account for the losses resulting from Fannie and Freddie, this is not the first time the Congress or the administration have blundered with respect to these two GSEs. And if we go back to 1992 with the GSE Act, which Congress passed, if you'll recall, there was a specific mandate in that bill that made the Federal Reserve shudder. That mandate said that As a result of these GSEs' ability now to arbitrage, to leverage at 100 to 1, there was a trade-off. They were going to go into the market and they were going to help provide affordable housing. And that was at the heart of part of the debacle in the mortgage market, was this requirement that they go into subprime and Alt-A. And eventually subprime and Alt-A were 50% of the portfolio that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac held.